Chapter 2054. Lu Ming was secretly shocked. Hundreds of quasi-emperors near the end of their lifespans. This was a super-demonic nation in the land of infinite demons. However, after thinking about it, Lu Ming understood. Sage realm cultivators could live for 100,000 to 200,000 years. As for quasi-emperors, it was too difficult to break through and reach martial emperor. After so many years, the number of quasi-emperors was definitely shocking. It was not just the ancient demonic nation. It was the same for other places and factions. These people did not have much lifespan left. If they did not find opportunities to break through, they would die of exhaustion sooner or later. As for those martial emperors, they were not at the end of their lifespans. Instead, they were about to face the next tribulation. The tribulation of martial emperors would get stronger with each tribulation. If they did not continue to break through, they would die under the tribulation sooner or later. Since ancient times, countless martial emperors had been born. However, only a few of them were truly immortal. Most of them died under the tribulation. Actually, martial emperors could feel the probability of them surviving the tribulation. For example, these people were not confident of surviving the tribulation. Hence, they wanted to enter the demonic sea to try their luck and see if they could break through. It was the same for the Blue Demon King. He was still a few thousand years away from the next tribulation. A few thousand years might seem long, but to these ancient martial emperors, it was just a blink of an eye. At this moment, space flashed, and the ancient great emperor appeared. Everyone bowed. This time, the main mission of entering the demonic sea is to take back the ancient demonic coffin. At the same time, we can try our luck. The ancient great emperor instructed. Then, he waved his hand, and many black jade tokens appeared in the air. Carry these jade tokens with you and you can roughly sense each other's location. If we get separated in the demonic sea, we can meet up according to the location shown on the jade tokens. The ancient great emperor introduced. Then, he waved his hand, and the jade tokens flew to everyone, one for each person. Lu Ming also received one and kept it. Let's go. You guys enter my small world first. I'll bring you there. The ancient great emperor said. Then, he waved his hand. Lu Ming felt a force enveloping him. In the next moment, he appeared in an unfamiliar place. This is the great emperor's small world. Lu Ming soared into the sky and looked around, exclaiming in amazement. What came into view were vast mountains that stretched as far as the eye could see. There were still living creatures living in the mountains, but Lu Ming realized that these living creatures were different from those in the outside world. It was very likely that this was a creature that had been born in the ancient great emperor's small world. Great emperors controlled the great Tao. However, there were 3,000 great Daos. Different great Daos controlled different great Daos, so the small worlds would naturally be different. The living beings that were born would also be different. It was truly miraculous. Lu Ming sized up the surroundings, feeling extremely curious. Not far away, the Blue Demon King's gaze swept over Lu Ming from time to time, killing intent flashing through his eyes. About half a day later, a force acted on them, and they left this place. Lu Ming discovered that they were standing at the peak of a mountain. We are already at the edge of the demon sea. The ancient great emperor's voice rang out. Lu Ming looked ahead. In front of him, there seemed to be a layer of dark clouds, as if it was an ocean of clouds. That place was boundless, with no end in sight. This was the demon sea. The demon sea was not a real sea, but a sea of demonic aura. The demon sea was filled with endless demonic aura, and the area was vast and boundless. It was like a vast ocean, so it was called the demon sea. Once we enter the demon sea, everything will become unpredictable. You must follow me closely. The ancient great emperor said, and then rushed into the demon sea. Everyone followed closely behind the ancient great emperor. Chi. Lu Ming discovered that the moment they rushed into the demon sea, the black fog adhered to Lu Ming's body and had a strong corrosive effect. Lu Ming hurriedly circulated his saint power to resist. Fortunately, the corrosion was not very strong. A quasi-emperor was enough to resist it. They flew forward for a while, and then flew down in a straight line. The terrain of the Demon Sea seemed to be very low. They kept descending for tens of thousands of meters. However, the lower they went, the fainter the demonic aura seemed to be. Towards the end, they only needed to circulate their saint power to resist it. Only then did they see the ground. It was a boundless land, a land of gray. The entire land was gray and deathly still, devoid of any life force. After they landed, they were highly focused. This was the Demon Sea, one of the 3 most terrifying forbidden lands in the land of infinite demons. If they were unlucky, even a great emperor would be injured. Naturally, they did not dare to be careless and were on full alert. The ancient great emperor spread out his spiritual consciousness, as if he was sensing something, and then flew into the depths of the Demon Sea. The ancient great emperor's speed was very slow, and everyone could still keep up. This area was really dead, and there was no vitality. They flew for an entire day, and no one knew how long they had flown, but they did not encounter a single living thing, nor did they encounter any danger. "Look, an ancient city!" At this moment, someone shouted. Everyone looked to the side and saw an ancient city in the middle of a huge mountain. However, it was only a ruined city. It had completely collapsed, as if it had fallen from the sky. They went to take a look, but they did not find anything. In the past, some people speculated that the Demon Sea was an ancient battlefield. However, some people said that the things in the Demon Sea fell from the sky, which was why the Demon Sea was formed. Judging from this ancient city alone, it really seemed to have fallen from the sky. At this moment, the ancient great emperor suddenly turned around and looked behind him. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly looked behind them, but there was nothing behind them. They didn't find anything. Some people felt their hair stand on end. Could there really be something behind them? Otherwise, why would the great emperor be so vigilant? "Great Emperor, what did you find?" someone asked. The ancient great emperor frowned and shook his head. "Let's leave this place." After saying that, he flew forward. Everyone followed, but many of them had solemn expressions. Even the great emperor seemed to be wary of something. That made their hair stand on end. They could not be so unlucky as to encounter something that even the great emperor was wary of, right? If that was the case, the situation would not be good. Very soon, they had flown a very long distance. At this moment, the ancient great emperor suddenly stopped. He looked at the void beside him and shouted, "Get out here!" Boom! Following that, the ancient great emperor struck out with his palm. The strength of the great emperor was earth-shattering and extremely terrifying. The entire void was shattered by his palm. Rumble! The void exploded. At this moment, everyone saw a figure wrapped in a black robe. His appearance could not be seen clearly at all. However, the strength of this figure was extremely shocking. His body kept flickering and was extremely fast. None of the ancient great emperor's palm hit him. A great emperor powerhouse. Everyone's expressions changed and became incomparably ugly. Chapter 2055. That figure kept flickering at an extremely fast speed. Swoosh! Suddenly, that figure waved his hand and slashed out a terrifying demonic light towards the ancient great emperor. This demonic light was like a peerless demonic blade with boundless power. It even split the sky open. Boom! The ancient great emperor rushed up and blasted out a shocking palm print. It collided with the demonic light, causing the sky to rumble. "So it's you. Hand over the ancient demonic coffin." The ancient great emperor roared. His figure flashed and rushed towards the other party, launching a terrifying attack. The other party was not afraid at all. His body was covered in demonic light as he fought with the ancient great emperor. "Retreat!" someone shouted. They frantically retreated. That black figure was definitely a great emperor. The aftermath of a battle between great emperors was too terrifying. If one was caught in it, only death would await them. In an instant, they retreated thousands of miles. Boom! Boom! In that area, the void was completely destroyed. One could see how intense the battle was. Many people's faces turned pale. They did not expect to meet such a terrifying expert as soon as they entered. At the same time, they also thought of the ancient great emperor's words. Could it be that the ancient demonic coffin was stolen by this figure? Lu Ming clenched his fists. He hoped that the ancient great emperor could defeat the other party and take back the ancient demonic coffin. If the ancient great emperor could not take it back, he would have even less hope. What is that? Suddenly, someone exclaimed in a trembling voice. There was no need for him to shout. Everyone saw it. In front of them, a pitch-black gust of wind swept towards them. The gust of wind covered a very wide area. It was as if it covered the sky and earth. No, it was not a gust of wind. It was a type of insect. A type of pitch-black insect. There was an endless number of them. They gathered together and flapped their wings, bringing about an endless gust of wind that swept towards Lu Ming and the others. From afar, it was a pitch-black gust of wind. Those are demonic armor insects. Gosh, why are there so many of them? An old man whose hair was almost falling out exclaimed. He was a boundary emperor and his face was extremely ugly at this moment. The demon armor insect was a very scary type of demon insect. Alone, it might not be strong, but in a group, it was very scary. Furthermore, there were endless demon armor insects here. It was unknown how many there were. Those above Martial Emperor blocked the demon armor insects. Those below Martial Emperor run. In the distance, the ancient Great Emperor's voice could be heard. They didn't dare to disobey the Great Emperor's orders. Immediately, the Martial Emperors charged at the demon armor insects, including the Blue Demon King. Boom! Boom! Dozens of Martial Emperors attacked at the same time, including True Emperors and Void Emperors. Large numbers of demonic armor insects were killed, falling to the ground like raindrops. Many of them even turned into ashes under the horrifying power of the Martial Emperor. However, there were too many demon armor insects. They were a black mass, seemingly endless. Many of them still managed to break through the encirclement of the Martial Emperors and charged towards Lu Ming and the others. Go! Someone shouted. Whoosh! Whoosh! Several hundred quasi-emperors fled in all directions, flying into the distance. Lu Ming also rushed in the same direction. Who? A strong wind blew, and the countless demon armor insects formed an arc, trying to surround them. Charge! Lu Ming unleashed his full power. His speed was faster than many quasi-emperors as he rushed towards an opening. There were no demon armor insects there. However, when Lu Ming was about to charge out of the encirclement of the demon armor insects, his expression changed slightly. This was because demon armor insects had appeared in front of him. However, there weren't many of them. They couldn't be compared to the endless demon armor insects. Charge over! Lu Ming gritted his teeth and charged over. Whoosh! Whoosh! Each demon armor insect was the size of a fist. They were pitch black, as if they were made of black iron. They were like pitch-black cannonballs as they charged at Lu Ming. A battle sword appeared in Lu Ming's hand. This battle sword was an emperor weapon. A battle sword was the best weapon to deal with such demon armor insects. It was better than a spear. Whoosh! With a swing of the battle sword, dozens of demon armor insects were cut in half by Lu Ming. However, compared to the densely packed demon armor insects, dozens of them were nothing. There were still many demon armor insects charging at Lu Ming. Lu Ming activated his Saint power and combined it with the law of primal chaos to form a protective shield around his body. Boom! Boom! The demon armor insects crashed into the protective shield. There were continuous rumbles, and the protective shield shook violently. However, they couldn't break through Lu Ming's defense for the time being. Kill! Lu Ming wielded the emperor weapon battle sword and slashed continuously. A large number of demon armor insects were killed. In a few breaths, hundreds of demon armor insects fell to the ground. These demon armor insects weren't very strong individually. However, there were too many of them. They charged at Lu Ming fearlessly, crashing into Lu Ming's protective shield. If this continued, Lu Ming's saint power would be depleted quickly. Once his saint power was depleted, he would be in danger. At this moment, the other boundary emperors were also surrounded by the demon armor insects. They were constantly being attacked by the demon armor insects. They also charged forward with all their might, killing the demon armor insects and charging forward. Kill! 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 Lu Ming kept slashing with his battle sword. With each slash, a large number of demon armor insects were killed. He charged forward quickly. Everywhere he passed, the demon armor insects fell like raindrops. Fortunately, this wasn't the place where the demon armor insects gathered. It was just the border area where there were fewer demon armor insects. Soon, Lu Ming broke through the encirclement and flew forward quickly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, behind him, the wind howled. Countless demon armor insects chased after Lu Ming. Lu Ming lowered his head and flew madly. After flying for at least a few hours, the demon armor insects behind him finally disappeared without a trace. However, Lu Ming was completely separated from the others. Look at the map. Lu Ming took out the map given by the ancient Great Emperor. He poured his saint power into it. The jade tablet glowed and a picture floated in the air. However, there was nothing unusual on the map. There was only a dot of light shining. Lu Ming compared it. The position of this dot of light was where he was. This dot of light was him. It seems that only by activating this jade tablet will there be a dot of light floating on it. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. Now that everyone was fighting, there was naturally no dot of light floating. Then, Lu Ming realized that he was lost. He had been flying around randomly and constantly changing directions. At this moment, he didn't know where he was. In the end, Lu Ming randomly chose a direction and flew forward. In the next few days, Lu Ming didn't meet anyone or any living creatures. It was as if he was the only one left in this world. He didn't know how much distance he had flown in these few days. Kill, kill, kill. Suddenly, Lu Ming heard faint battle cries coming from ahead. Lu Ming was shocked. This was because the battle cries didn't come from one or two people or dozens of people. It sounded like thousands of soldiers and horses were roaring. Why would there be thousands of soldiers and horses here? Lu Ming was curious. Chapter 2056. The closer Lu Ming got to the source of the sound, the louder the battle cries became. Kill! 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 The battle cries pierced through the clouds. Lu Ming climbed up a mountain peak that was dead silent. He stood at the peak of the mountain and looked ahead. His pupils suddenly constricted. There was a huge ancient city in front of him. This ancient city was different from the ones he had seen before. The ancient cities he had seen before had almost collapsed, but this one was still intact. It was very majestic and huge. From afar, it looked like a giant beast lying there. Outside the ancient city, there was a black mass of figures. These figures were wearing iron armor and holding all kinds of weapons. These are not living beings. Lu Ming looked at these figures carefully. These figures were completely black, and their bodies under the armor seemed to be formed by energy. They were not living beings. Demonic spirits. Lu Ming muttered. These should be demonic spirits formed by the indestructible demonic thoughts of the demonic Tao experts after they died in battle. There were at least tens of thousands of demonic spirits. When they gathered together, they would occasionally let out battle cries that shook the heavens and earth. However, the demonic spirits had been lingering outside the ancient city. They did not leave or enter the ancient city. This ancient city is intact. I'm afraid there will be opportunities. Lu Ming thought. However, he had no intention of going in to explore. Not to mention whether there were dangers in the ancient city, the demonic spirits alone were not easy to deal with. After observing for a while, Lu Ming shook his head. He moved and left the place. This time, Lu Ming did not fly far before he saw a few rays of light flash and a few old men appeared not far away. They were the boundary emperors of the ancient demonic nation. Obviously, they were attracted by the battle cries. Lu Ming. The boundary emperors saw Lu Ming and smiled as they flew toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming, what's in front? Why are there such intense battle cries? It sounds like thousands of soldiers and horses. An elder asked. His face carried a gentle smile, and his expression was kind and amiable. It's an ancient city. There are at least tens of thousands of demonic spirits outside the ancient city. The battle cries are coming from the demonic spirits. Lu Ming replied. An ancient city. The eyes of the old men lit up. They had come here in search of opportunities because their lifespans were about to be exhausted. If they could not make a breakthrough, they would die sooner or later. They bitterly cultivated for more than 100,000 years, yet in the end, they turned to dust. They were unwilling to accept this and wanted to stake it all. When they heard that there was an ancient city, they were naturally moved. They speculated that the demonic sea was most likely formed by falling from the heavenly realm. It definitely contained a fortuitous encounter. Lu Ming, aren't you going to explore the ancient city? The kind-looking old man asked. I'm not going. Lu Ming shook his head. His main objective in entering the Devil's Sea was to obtain the ancient demonic coffin. As for opportunities and whatnot, he wasn't too interested in them. Then let's go in. The kind-looking old man smiled. There were 4 of them in total. They flew towards the ancient city and just happened to pass by Lu Ming. Just as the two sides clashed, a sword light suddenly blossomed from the kind-looking old man's hand and slashed towards Lu Ming's neck. The sword light tore through the void, bringing with it a terrifying whistling sound. It was incomparably sharp. At the same time, the other 3 quasi-emperors also made their moves. All sorts of terrifying attacks were aimed at Lu Ming's vital points. However, when the 4's attacks landed on Lu Ming's body, the primal chaos light burst out from Lu Ming's body and blocked all the attacks. Moreover, the primal chaos light trembled and a powerful force surged out. The 4 quasi-emperors' bodies trembled and they all retreated. You are all courting death. Lu Ming said coldly as his cold gaze swept across the 4. You have been guarding against us? The kind-looking old man said with an unsightly expression. Earlier, when they were so close to each other, their attacks were extremely fast. If Lu Ming hadn't been guarding against them, he wouldn't have been able to react in such a short time. Furthermore, he wouldn't have been able to defend and counterattack. The only explanation was that Lu Ming had been guarding against them and had already prepared his defenses. The Blue Demon King, that old fellow, has been showing killing intent towards me along the way. Moreover, I have heard that he has great authority in the ancient devil nation. If he wants to order people around, many people would be willing to be his lackeys. Naturally, I have to guard against him. Lu Ming said indifferently. It could be said that among the people who entered the Devil's Sea this time, Lu Ming was wary of everyone except the ancient great emperor. That old fellow, the Blue Demon King, had lost face because of Lu Ming previously. Clearly, he harbored a grudge against him and had always wanted to kill him. With the Blue Demon King's authority, it was normal for him to bribe some people to kill Lu Ming. Let's go. The kind-looking old man roared and turned to run. They were all too clear about Lu Ming's combat strength. He wasn't someone they could fight against. Since their sneak attack failed, they could only run. Do you think you can escape? Kill! Lu Ming was the first to chase after the kind-looking old man. His speed was astonishing. In just a few breaths, he had caught up with the kind-looking old man. The kind-looking old man was almost scared to death. He roared, Lu Ming, you can't kill me. This is the ancient devil nation. If you kill me, you will die too. You still dare to threaten me at this time? What a joke. Kill! Lu Ming shouted coldly. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He pointed his finger and an extremely condensed finger force burst out. Although the kind-looking old man tried his best to resist, it was useless. The finger force directly pierced through his forehead and destroyed his soul. Whoosh! After killing the old man, Lu Ming didn't stop and chased after the other three. Split up and run. One of them roared. The three of them ran in 3 different directions. However, Lu Ming caught up with one of them and killed him in one move. Then, Lu Ming chased after the third person. No, spare my life, the Quasi-Emperor yelled. However, Lu Ming was indifferent. He had to kill these people. How dare you? You are courting death. At this moment, an angry roar was heard. In the distance, a terrifying demonic light slashed toward Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. Before the voice died away, the demonic light was already about to slash Lu Ming. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed and he felt a sense of danger. At this moment, he burst out with all his strength. The light of primal chaos surrounded his body. He controlled 2 types of laws and executed his strongest move, the Annihilation Chaos Finger of Calamity. Boom! A gray chaos finger of calamity pointed at the beam of demonic light, and a shocking rumble erupted. The demonic light buzzed and was eventually blocked by Lu Ming. However, the chaos finger of calamity was also slashed apart by the demonic light. Lu Ming felt an extremely powerful force surging toward him. He couldn't help but retreat a few thousand meters. He felt the blood in his body churning. What a terrifying force! Lu Ming was shocked. It was definitely a martial emperor. Whoosh! There was a flash of light in front and a black-robed middle-aged man appeared. This person exuded a terrifying aura. It was an emperor's aura. This person is definitely not a 1-star void emperor. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. Chapter 2057. The black-robed middle-aged man looked coldly at Lu Ming and said, Lu Ming, the great emperor has treated you well. He even brought you here to look for the ancient demonic coffin. Who would have thought that you would secretly kill the experts of the Devil Nation? You are heartless. You deserve to die. What a joke. You don't have to be so righteous if you want to kill me. You must have been sent by the Blue Demon King to kill me. You are just a lackey. Lu Ming sneered. At the same time, he was thinking of a way to escape. Die! The black-robed middle-aged man did not say anything else. He immediately attacked. The power of the heavens burst forth and turned into a saber light, slashing towards Lu Ming at an extremely fast speed. 2-star illusionary emperor. Lu Ming judged that this person should be a 2-star illusionary emperor. He was stronger than a 1-star illusionary emperor but not ridiculously strong. However, a 2-star illusionary emperor was not someone that Lu Ming could withstand. Swoosh! Lu Ming turned and left. He turned into a beam of light and flew towards the ancient city. If he wanted to shake off the black-robed middle-aged man, he could only rely on the ancient city. Trying to leave? No way! The black-robed middle-aged man shouted coldly. He turned into a beam of black light and chased after Lu Ming. At the same time, he slashed out a beam of black demonic light. Lu Ming's body glowed. Dozens of absolute sacred weapons and 2 emperor weapons floated out. The dozens of weapons gathered together. The combat weapon chi gathered and formed a huge defensive weapon. At the same time, the law of primal chaos and the light of primal chaos were added to the combat weapon. Lu Ming did not care and moved forward rapidly. Clang! The black-robed middle-aged man's demonic light slashed at the combat weapon behind Lu Ming. The combat weapon shook and the dozens of weapons were almost shattered. If it were not for the 2 emperor weapons, the combat weapon chi, and the light of primal chaos and the law of primal chaos, an ordinary absolute sacred weapon would have been shattered by this attack. The terrifying power kept surging toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming felt his blood and qi churning and he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. However, he still managed to block it in the end. Furthermore, that power became his driving force, allowing him to fly forward even faster. The black-robed middle-aged man's face turned cold. Lu Ming's strength was truly terrifying. Even with the combat strength of a 2-star empty emperor, he was actually blocked. However, when he thought of the reward that the Blue Demon King had promised, his heart burned with passion, and he quickly chased after Lu Ming. Kill! In front of the ancient city, there were tens of thousands of demonic spirits. They were a black mass, wearing armor and holding weapons. Their battle cries shook the sky. Lu Ming quickly approached the ancient city. Clang! At this time, the black-robed middle-aged man launched another attack. A devilish light slashed at the battle weapon behind Lu Ming, causing it to shake violently. This time, Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. With his current combat strength, he could still contend against an ordinary 1-star empty emperor. However, the gap between him and a 2-star empty emperor was too great. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and endured, rushing headlong into the dark mass of devil spirits. Kill! Some devil spirits discovered Lu Ming, and their murderous intent swept towards Lu Ming. At the same time, all kinds of weapons were launched towards Lu Ming. It's equivalent to the Great Saint Realm. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat, and he judged the strength of the devil spirit that attacked him. Therefore, he did not stop at all. With the light of chaos protecting his body, he directly rushed over. Bang! Bang! The demonic spirit that attacked Lu Ming directly exploded into pieces. In an instant, Lu Ming rushed a few hundred meters forward. However, immediately, more devil spirits charged towards Lu Ming. Moreover, their combat strength was stronger than before, reaching the absolute saint realm. Lu Ming ignored them and continued to rush forward. Behind him, the black-robed middle-aged man stopped. He did not dare to rush over rashly like Lu Ming. He just wanted to observe for a while. Behind him, there was the sound of air being torn apart, and more than 10 figures rushed over. They were all old men of the Boundary Emperor realm. Obviously, most of them had rushed over from behind. Just the few of you. The black-robed middle-aged man looked around and said coldly. The 2 martial emperors will be here soon. A white-haired old man said. Yes. This time, the Azure Demon King has entrusted us with the task of killing Lu Ming. We must not make any mistakes. One of you will stay here and wait for the other martial emperors to arrive. The rest of you follow me and prepare to charge into this ancient city. The black-robed middle-aged man ordered. At this moment, Lu Ming had rushed all the way and was already halfway through the journey. Although there were many devil spirits, they were too scattered. Moreover, there were not many experts in the first section. The strongest was only a perfected absolute saint. They could not stop Lu Ming at all. However, the closer they got to the ancient city, the stronger the devil spirits became. Whoosh! Whoosh! Several rusty iron swords slashed at Lu Ming. The swords whistled, wanting to tear Lu Ming apart. This attack had the offensive strength of a boundary emperor. Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. He punched out, and the image of the suppressing prison steel appeared and smashed forward. Bang! Bang! The suppressing prison steel knocked away a few devil spirits, turning them into ashes in midair. The suppressing prison heavenly art is indeed effective against these devil spirits. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. He continuously punched out with both fists, knocking away the Boundary Emperor realm devil spirits one by one. Even when facing the Boundary Emperor devil spirits, Lu Ming did not slow down. He quickly approached the ancient city. The black-robed middle-aged man finally could not hold back. He roared, "Charge with me!" Whoosh! Whoosh! The black-robed middle-aged man took the lead and charged out. 10 odd boundary emperors followed him like a long spear, stabbing at the devil spirit army. Only one boundary emperor remained to receive the others. After all, the black-robed middle-aged man was a 2-star foe emperor. He led the 10-odd boundary emperors and pierced through the devil spirit army like a long spear, quickly chasing after Lu Ming. Ordinary devil spirits could not stop them at all. When the black-robed middle-aged man was halfway through, Lu Ming was already about to break through the devil spirit's defense. However, at this moment, Lu Ming ran into trouble. There were 2 terrifying devil spirits attacking Lu Ming. These 2 devil spirits were wearing rusty armor. One held a sword and the other a long spear. Their strength was extremely shocking. These 2 devil spirits were equivalent to 1-star foe emperors. The iron sword and long spear attacked Lu Ming. In an instant, they scattered Lu Ming's suppressing prison steel and blocked Lu Ming's body. Lu Ming's heart sank slightly. Indeed, there were martial emperors in the devil spirit army. Fortunately, they were not too terrifying. The 2 devil spirits were only equivalent to 1-star foe emperors. Lu Ming is blocked. Charge over. The black-robed middle-aged man's eyes lit up. He charged at Lu Ming at an even faster speed. With the 2 devil spirits blocking Lu Ming and him, Lu Ming would definitely die. Suppressing prison steel. At this moment, Lu Ming's mind stirred. The suppressing prison steel floated out and rapidly grew in size. It emitted a bright light and suppressed the 2 devil spirits. Boom! Boom! The suppressing prison steel's bloodline restrained the devil spirits even more. The bodies of the 2 devil spirits were directly sent flying by the suppressing prison steel. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Ming's figure flashed and charged through the encirclement of the devil spirit army, rushing toward the ancient city. The strange thing was that when Lu Ming approached the ancient city, the devil spirits stopped in their tracks and did not chase after Lu Ming. Chapter 2058. The ancient city's gates were open. However, the light in the city seemed very dim. Looking from the outside, the buildings in the city looked hazy, unable to be seen clearly. Boom! Boom! Behind, the black-robed, middle-aged man continuously sent the demonic spirits flying as he gave chase. Lu Ming did not stop, directly charging into the ancient city. However, the moment Lu Ming charged into the ancient city, his expression changed. This was because he could not fly in the ancient city. The ancient city forbade flying. There was a mysterious power that prevented him from flying. Furthermore, the light in the city was indeed very dim. Visibility was not high. Even with Lu Ming's eyesight, he could not see far. There were many huge palaces and all sorts of ancient buildings in the city. They were tall and majestic, like huge monsters standing tall in the ancient city. Lu Ming directly charged into a small alley, running wildly in it. Then, he turned into another small alley. There were countless streets and alleys in the ancient city. After a few turns, Lu Ming was already far away from the city gates. Just at this moment, the black-robed, middle-aged man led his men into the ancient city. The moment they entered the ancient city, their expressions changed as well. They felt that they could not fly. There might be fortuitous encounters in this ancient city. Let's search for that brat Lu Ming while searching for fortuitous encounters. A look of greed flashed in the black-robed, middle-aged man's eyes. Following that, he got 2 quasi-emperors to stand guard near the city gates. If they discovered Lu Ming, they were to report immediately. Then, he led the remaining quasi-emperors down a random street and ran. Just at this moment, 2 more people arrived outside the ancient city. These 2 old men had exceptionally strong auras. They were clearly faux emperor experts. After the quasi-emperor who stayed outside to provide support gave a simple explanation of the situation, the 2 faux emperors charged into the ancient city as well. Although there were martial emperor demonic spirits among the demonic spirits, the 2 were focused on charging in, not fighting. The faux emperor demonic spirits could not stop them. After fighting for a while, they charged into the ancient city as well. Lu Ming wandered around the ancient city, circling around many strange ancient buildings. The city was eerily quiet. It was empty, without any signs of life. What is in these buildings? Lu Ming was curious. He rushed to the wall of a building and looked inside. The interior of the building was similarly empty. There was nothing inside. This was an empty city. Lu Ming looked at a few buildings in a row. They were all empty. Suddenly, Lu Ming's eyes flickered, because he saw the door of a palace in front of him, which was slightly ajar. The doors of the other buildings were all closed, except for this palace. Could it have been opened by the ancient devil nation? Lu Ming pondered. Those from the ancient devil nation must have entered as well, so it wasn't surprising that they were the ones who opened the door. Lu Ming retracted his aura, approached the door, and looked inside. With a glance, his pupils suddenly constricted. Inside the palace was a small courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a figure. That figure was seated cross-legged. It was wearing armor. However, within the armor was a skeleton. The armor was rusty and stained with dark red blood. It seemed that it was an ancient person who had died a long time ago. Lu Ming observed for a while, then left the place and continued to walk through the ancient city. He wondered if he should return to the city gate and leave this ancient city. For some reason, he had a bad feeling in his heart. He felt that this ancient city was very strange. After a while, a figure flashed at the entrance of the street in front of him. 7 to 8 figures appeared. It was the black-robed middle-aged man and the quasi-emperors. They also saw Lu Ming at a glance. "Lu Ming, where are you going now?" The black-robed middle-aged man said coldly and chased after Lu Ming. Lu Ming turned and ran toward another street. The black-robed middle-aged man chased after him. They had explored a few ancient buildings in a row, but they didn't find anything. There was no opportunity at all, so Lu Ming couldn't let it go. At the very least, if they killed Lu Ming, they could still obtain a generous reward from the Blue Demon King. Soon, Lu Ming turned 2 streets. However, at this moment, 2 more figures appeared in front of him. When Lu Ming saw these 2 people, his expression changed. These 2 people's auras were extremely terrifying. They were also martial emperors. Lu Ming. When the 2 saw Lu Ming, murderous intent flashed in their eyes. Then, they charged at Lu Ming. "Huh! Stop Lu Ming!" The black-robed middle-aged man guffawed. Lu Ming's expression turned sullen. It looked like the Blue Demon King really wanted to kill him. He actually worked with so many people in secret. Naturally, Lu Ming could not stop and fight with the other party. The other party had 3 Void Emperors. If he got entangled, he would die for sure. Lu Ming's figure changed, and he charged down another street on the right. Ah! Just at this moment, a miserable shriek rang out in the silent ancient city, sounding extremely mournful. Lu Ming turned around and took a quick glance. Immediately, he felt a chill run down his spine. Xiao Chen saw that one of the quasi-emperors chasing him had fallen behind. At this moment, that quasi-emperor was completely encased in armor. That armor was mottled with rust and had pitch-black bloodstains on it. At this moment, the armor encased that quasi-emperor. That quasi-emperor's body quickly shriveled up as if the armor had drained all his essence blood. "What the hell is this? Scram!" The black-robed middle-aged man shouted angrily. He swung his hand, and a pitch-black demonic saber struck the armor. Clang! A melodious sound rang out as the demonic saber struck the armor. However, there was not a single mark on the armor. As for that quasi-emperor, he had already stopped screaming and turned into a withered skeleton. Attack together! The black-robed middle-aged man was enraged. He launched all sorts of attacks at the armor. However, the armor flickered and charged into a building. By the time the black-robed middle-aged man rushed into the building, there was no trace of the armor. The black-robed middle-aged man and the others showed somewhat sullen expressions. "Continue chasing Lu Ming." The black-robed middle-aged man shouted angrily. The black-robed middle-aged burly man bellowed angrily. They continued to chase after Lu Ming. However, not long after, another miserable scream rang out. That armor came out of nowhere and entangled another quasi-emperor. The black-robed middle-aged man and the others launched a torrential barrage of attacks. When the various attacks landed on the armor gave off clanging sounds. In the end, it charged into another building with a flash. The armor ate people. Everyone's hair stood on end. What was going on? It was just a piece of armor. To think that it repeatedly charged out and consumed a quasi-emperor's essence blood. A quasi-emperor could not resist at all. This was too horrifying. The remaining quasi-emperors paled somewhat. The quasi-emperor should walk in the middle. The three of us will guard the periphery. The black-robed middle-aged man said. Then, he got the quasi-emperor to walk in the middle and the three faux emperors to guard the periphery. Not far away, Lu Ming also heard the miserable scream and felt somewhat scared. To think that a piece of armor actually ate people. Most importantly, Lu Ming felt that this armor was very familiar. It was exactly the same as the armor on a corpse that he had seen in a courtyard previously. Chapter 2059. Lu Ming was running when all of a sudden, his hair stood on end. He felt a sense of impending danger. He turned around abruptly and pointed behind him. Chi! The finger force of the chaotic calamity finger shot out and struck a piece of armor. Clang! That armor shook a little, but nothing happened to it. It did not leave any traces behind. It swayed a little in the air and pounced toward Lu Ming at an alarming speed. Swoosh! Swoosh! Lu Ming continued to attack the armor with the chaotic calamity finger, but it was useless. The armor only shook a few times and continued to charge at Lu Ming. Lu Ming saw that there was blood flowing on the armor. They were like tentacles that stretched toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming used the law of chaos and the chaotic light to resist. But when the tentacles came into contact with the law of chaos and the chaotic light, the law of chaos and the chaotic light shook violently. In a breath's time, the tentacles tore them apart. Lu Ming retreated quickly and his hair stood on end. This armor was extremely terrifying. Even the chaotic light could not block it. Prison suppression. Lu Ming's heart moved. The prison suppression steel bloodline appeared behind him and emitted a bright light that suppressed the armor. Chi chi chi, the blood-red tentacles on the armor made a sizzling sound when they came into contact with the energy of the prison suppression steel. It was like ice being thrown into a fire and quickly melted. Those blood-red tentacles stretched back, and the armor disappeared in a flash. That was close. Lu Ming put away the prison suppression steel and let out a long breath. That armor was extremely evil. It seemed to have a spirit and was indestructible. It was very terrifying. Lu Ming is over there. Not far away, there was a loud roar. The black-robed middle-aged man and the others chased after Lu Ming. Obviously, Lu Ming had used the prison suppression steel. The light was too strong and they had discovered him. They really don't give up. Lu Ming's eyes flashed as he rushed in a certain direction. Not long after, Lu Ming arrived in front of a palace. The door of this palace was ajar. Lu Ming retracted his aura to the extreme, approached the door, and looked inside. Previously, there was a skeleton in the courtyard. That skeleton was wearing armor. Now, there was another skeleton. However, the armor it wore was gone. It really is this armor, Lu Ming murmured. After which, the purgatory-suppressing monument floated above his head. Lu Ming then rushed towards the skeleton. Without any abnormalities, Lu Ming arrived at Dry Bone's side. Whoosh! At this time, the door flashed, and the armor appeared. It twisted in a very human-like way, as if it was very nervous. Don't come over. Otherwise, I'll destroy this skeleton. Lu Ming condensed a big hand with his sacred power and grabbed the skeleton in his hand. As expected, the armor stopped, not daring to approach. Lu Ming's eyes lit up. It seemed that his guess was right. The armor and the skeleton were one. In other words, the owner of the armor was the skeleton. Perhaps the skeleton was very powerful when it was alive. After its death, the powerful energy nourished the armor, causing the armor to develop spiritual intelligence. However, the armor was still under the control of the skeleton. As long as the skeleton was destroyed, the armor would also be affected. "Back off," Lu Ming said coldly. The armor twisted a few times, but in the end, it retreated. Lu Ming revealed a smile and said, "Follow behind me. It's best that you don't mess around. I can destroy this skeleton with just a thought." After saying that, Lu Ming left the courtyard and headed in a certain direction. The armor could only obediently follow behind Lu Ming. "Come!" Lu Ming sneered. The purgatory-suppressing monument rapidly enlarged, emitting a dazzling light that could be seen from afar. Then, Xiaochen put away the purgatory-suppressing monument and got the armor to hide in a building. Then, he waited quietly. Xiaochen did not have to wait for long before a figure flashed in front. The black-robed, middle-aged man quickly arrived with a group of people. However, the other two martial emperors were nowhere to be seen. Lu Ming smiled and looked behind him. Two figures quickly rushed over from behind. They were the two martial emperors chasing after Xiaochen. Clearly, the other party feared that Lu Ming would run away, so they attacked him from two sides. Two one-star foe emperors. Lu Ming revealed a cold smile as he stood there without moving. Whoosh! Whoosh! The black-robed, middle-aged man's figure flashed, and he led 7 or 8 quasi-emperors and the two foe emperors to surround Lu Ming. "It looks like that old fellow Blue Demon King really spent a lot of money to kill me." Lu Ming smiled faintly. "Lu Ming, although you are a genius, you do not know how to conduct yourself. You even dared to offend the Blue Demon King. Only death awaits you." The black-robed, middle-aged man said coldly. Lu Ming was rendered speechless. Speaking of which, from the start to the end, Xiaochen had not taken the initiative to provoke the Blue Demon King. It was the other party who had been targeting him. First, Lu Ming did not let Xiaochen participate in the competition. Then, Lu Ming defeated the ancient demon, slapping Xiaochen's face. Was that not what Xiaochen asked for? Such people could only be described as narrow-minded. "If you want to kill me, be careful not to lose your insignificant lives here." Lu Ming smiled coldly. Boom! Lu Ming moved, executing the destruction primal chaos tribulation finger. He pointed at the black-robed, middle-aged man. "You overestimate yourself." The black-robed, middle-aged man also moved. His palm was like a saber as he chopped down. A demonic saber light chopped at Lu Ming. Boom! The destruction primal chaos tribulation finger could not resist for long before it shattered. Lu Ming quickly retreated. However, at this moment, that armor charged out of a building and entangled a quasi-emperor. That quasi-emperor let out a miserable shriek as his body rapidly shriveled. "Kill Lu Ming first!" The black-robed, middle-aged man roared as he charged at Lu Ming. Whoosh! Lu Ming directly charged into a hall at the side. The black-robed, middle-aged man and 2 other martial emperors also charged into the hall, chasing after Lu Ming. Of course, the quasi-emperors were included as well. The hall was very large, but it was empty. There were no signs of life at all. Lu Ming rushed into the hall and dashed toward the depths of the hall. Ah! Behind him, another miserable shriek rang out. After the armor devoured a quasi-emperor, it entangled another quasi-emperor. Moreover, as the armor devoured quasi-emperors, it seemed to become stronger. At first, it needed a few breaths to devour a quasi-emperor. Now, it only needed 1 breath. Damn it! The black-robed, middle-aged man roared. If this continued, all the quasi-emperors would be devoured. The 2 of you continue chasing. I will block that armor. The black-robed, middle-aged man roared as he turned around and charged at that armor. By the time he arrived, another quasi-emperor had been devoured by the armor. In just a short while, the armor had already devoured 3 quasi-emperors and killed them. Enraged, the black-robed, middle-aged man sent out a move with his full strength. However, the armor did not attack him at all. It flickered a few times and directly fled. The remaining 5 quasi-emperors paled, their faces drained of blood. Now, follow me closely. Chapter 2060. The black-robed middle-aged man led the remaining 5 boundary emperors and chased after Lu Ming. At this moment, Lu Ming and the 2 void emperors had already rushed out of the palace and were quite a distance away. Lu Ming, prepare to die. We'll give you a quick death. You've offended the Blue Demon King. Your fate is already sealed. The 2 void emperors constantly shouted coldly, provoking Lu Ming. Lu Ming could not be bothered with him. He wandered around the winding streets. After running for a while, Lu Ming suddenly stopped and sneered, "You want to kill me? Come on." Bam! Bam! Lu Ming took a few steps and charged towards the 2 void emperors. The 2 void emperors were stunned. They did not understand why Lu Ming suddenly stopped running. However, Lu Ming stopping was exactly what they wanted. Kill! The 2 void emperors charged towards Lu Ming. However, at this moment, the armor rushed out from a building at the side and pounced towards one of the void emperors. The void emperor was shocked and quickly changed the direction of his attack towards the armor. However, the armor was sturdy and indestructible. It only shook slightly and continued to charge towards the void emperor. Tentacles appeared on the armor and wrapped around the opponent. Primal Chaos Calamity Finger. Lu Ming used the Primal Chaos Calamity Finger with all his strength and charged towards the other Void Emperor. With Lu Ming's current strength, the Void Emperor did not dare to be careless. He also used all his strength to attack Lu Ming. Bam! Bam! Lu Ming and the Void Emperor exchanged 2 moves. Although Lu Ming was at a disadvantage, he managed to block them. Lu Ming had fought the Void Emperor of the He clan before. However, the Void Emperor of the He clan had just broken through to the 1-star Void Emperor. His strength was not as strong as the person in front of him, but it was not much weaker. Although Lu Ming was not a match for him, he was still a threat to the other party. Lu Ming's back glowed as his 3rd bloodline appeared. Lu Ming had borrowed part of his 3rd bloodline's power. However, Lu Ming was very careful and did not dare to borrow too much. He only borrowed the portion that he could control. Even so, Lu Ming's strength had greatly increased. Whoosh whoosh. Lu Ming continued to unleash Chaotic Tribulation Finger. After borrowing the power of his 3rd bloodline, Lu Ming's power had greatly increased. Finally, he was able to fight his opponent head-on and not be at a disadvantage. Lu Ming entangled one of them, but the other Void Emperor was in danger. After devouring a few quasi-emperors, the armor's might had indeed increased greatly. That armor was very terrifying to begin with. Even Lu Ming's light of primal chaos could not block it. But now, the armor's power had increased greatly. Coupled with Lu Ming's threat, it could unleash even more terrifying power. The quasi-emperor's attacks continued to bombard the armor, but it was useless. The armor kept getting closer to the quasi-emperor. The blood-red tentacles extended towards the quasi-emperor and directly broke his defense. The blood-red tentacles wrapped around the quasi-emperor and began to devour him. Get lost! The quasi-emperor roared in horror as he struggled with all his might. However, it was useless. The armor wrapped tighter around him like an octopus and began to devour him. Ah! Save me! Save me! The quasi-emperor screamed in agony as he frantically twisted his body. However, it was all in vain. He felt that everything in his body was being devoured by the armor. His body was rapidly shriveling. The other quasi-emperor was horrified and wanted to save him, but he was firmly entangled by Lu Ming. At this moment, the black-robed middle-aged man finally arrived with his men. However, when he arrived, the quasi-emperor who was entangled by the armor was already beyond saving. His body had completely shriveled up and turned into a skeleton. The essence, chi, and spirit in his body had disappeared without a trace. A layer of bright red light spread out from the armor as if there was blood surging on it. Swoosh! The armor moved and charged towards the Quasi-Emperor who was fighting with Lu Ming. Get lost! The Quasi-Emperor exploded with an attack, wanting to blast open the armor and escape. However, Lu Ming would not give him the chance. He pointed a finger at the Quasi-Emperor's chest, causing the Quasi-Emperor to vomit blood and be severely injured. The armor wrapped around the Quasi-Emperor and its tentacles wrapped around him and began to devour him. Help! The Quasi-Emperor screamed in horror. The black-robed middle-aged man who was chasing after the Quasi-Emperor turned pale and revealed a terrified expression. If a one-star Quasi-Emperor could not resist, then a two-star Quasi-Emperor like him would be in danger. Let's go! The black-robed middle-aged man did not hesitate and turned to leave. This ancient city was too strange. If he stayed any longer, he might not even be able to keep his life. The 5 Quasi-Emperors followed the black-robed middle-aged man and rushed towards the city's gate. They did not want to stay in this ancient city for a moment longer. The Quasi-Emperor who was entangled by the armor let out a desperate roar. Not long after, he was devoured by the armor and turned into a skeleton. After devouring 2 Quasi-Emperors in a row, the armor emitted a dazzling blood-red light. It was incomparably horrifying. The armor seemed to be staring at Lu Ming and circling around Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not dare to be careless. The prison-suppressing steel floated in the air. At the same time, he grabbed the skeleton and stared at the armor. The armor flew a few rounds, as if it was still afraid that Lu Ming would destroy the skeleton. Moreover, it was also very afraid of the prison-suppressing steel. In the end, it retreated a little and kept a distance from Lu Ming. Chase! Lu Ming whispered and chased after the black-robed middle-aged man and the others. The armor followed behind him. However, when Lu Ming rushed to the ancient city's gate, he found that the black-robed middle-aged man and the others had already rushed out of the city and into the demonic spirit army. They were breaking out of the encirclement. Whoosh! Lu Ming also rushed out of the city. However, the armor remained in the city. It seemed like it could not leave the city. No matter how Lu Ming threatened it, it was useless. Lu Ming sighed in regret. He could only return to the city. Soon, the black-robed middle-aged man broke out of the encirclement of the demonic spirits. However, he did not go far. Instead, he stood guard there. The black-robed middle-aged man showed an extremely unsightly expression. This time, the losses were disastrous. After entering the ancient city, not only did 4 Quasi-Emperors die, but 2 faux emperors also died. Faux emperors were not people that Quasi-Emperors could compare to. They were already martial emperors. Only 1 out of 100 Quasi-Emperors could break through to martial emperor. Send a message to the Blue Demon King. We will wait here. That armor seems to be unable to come out. The black-robed middle-aged man said coldly. Without that armor, Lu Ming did not care about it at all. Lu Ming observed the city for a while. When he discovered that the black-robed middle-aged man stood guard outside the city, he could not help frowning. That black-robed middle-aged man was a 2-star faux emperor. Even if Shaoqun borrowed the power of his 3rd bloodline, he would not be able to charge out. Let's take a look at this ancient city first. See if there are any other powers that we can borrow. Perhaps there are other city gates that lead outside. Lu Ming thought for a while. Then, he turned around and headed into the ancient city. This ancient city was too big. It was vast and boundless. Furthermore, there was a restricted airspace, preventing flight. Traveling like this would take a lot of time. Lu Ming searched 10-odd buildings in the city but did not discover anything. There were also no other strange places. Chapter 2061. To Lu Ming's disappointment, he came to the left and right sides of the ancient city but did not see any city gates. There were only tall and majestic city walls. Moreover, there seemed to be a force on the city walls that prevented him from going up. In other words, it was impossible to leave through the walls. This ancient city can't only have one city gate, right? Lu Ming was speechless. Normally, a big city would not only have one city gate. Even if there were fewer, there would at least be two. Normally, there would be 4, 8, or even more. Perhaps, in the depths of the ancient city, there will be a city gate in the direction opposite to the city gate. Lu Ming pondered and decided to enter the depths of the ancient city and pass through it. Just as Lu Ming was about to leave and enter the depths of the ancient city, a few more figures arrived outside the ancient city. One of them had 8 people, 4 of whom were martial emperors. The leading old man was the Blue Demon King. The Blue Demon King had a lot of power in the ancient Devil Kingdom. He was of the same generation as the ancient Great Emperor. His cultivation had reached the peak of the true Emperor realm and he was highly regarded by the ancient Great Emperor. Therefore, many people in the ancient Devil Kingdom would give him face. Moreover, the Blue Demon King had promised a generous reward for killing Lu Ming. Naturally, many people would follow the Blue Demon King to kill Lu Ming. What's going on? The Blue Demon King arrived and glanced coldly at the black-robed middle-aged man. It's like this, the black-robed middle-aged man explained the situation in the ancient city in a trembling voice. A piece of armor? The Azure Demon King's eyes flashed, followed by a cold murderous intent. They had lost so many experts because of Lu Ming. Lu Ming deserved to die. Those above Martial Emperor, follow me. The rest stay outside. The Blue Demon King ordered and flew into the ancient city. The Blue Demon King was a peak true Emperor realm expert. He was too strong. The devil spirits were like ants in front of the Blue Demon King. With a single slap, a large number of devil spirits were destroyed. They easily charged through the devil spirit army and rushed into the ancient city. 2 people in a group. Split up and look for Lu Ming. If you find him, inform us immediately. The Blue Demon King said. The people following the Blue Demon King this time were not to be underestimated. There were 3 of them, 1 true emperor and 2 void emperors. All of them were 5-star void emperors and above, much stronger than the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man followed the true emperor to the right. At this moment, Lu Ming had already passed through the center of the ancient city and was heading toward the depths. Compared to the direction of the city gate, this was indeed the depths of the ancient city. When Lu Ming arrived at the depths of the ancient city, he felt his hair stand on end. He felt a sense of danger. The buildings here are even more majestic. They look like small castles. Lu Ming looked around. The buildings here were indeed more majestic. They were pitch black and filled with the aura of time. Lu Ming moved forward cautiously. Behind him, the armor continued to follow him. Dong! Suddenly, a building in front of him shook. Lu Ming was startled and stopped. Dong! Then, the building shook again. It was as if a giant beast was attacking the castle from inside the building. After a few more tremors, the sound disappeared. Lu Ming frowned. He used his divine breath technique to restrain his aura to the extreme and continued forward. Roar! When Lu Ming passed by the building, an explosive roar came from the building. Then, the sound of iron chains colliding could be heard. In the next moment, Lu Ming saw a claw reaching out from the building. This claw was like a beast's claw. It was covered in black scales and wrapped around the claw were black chains. The claw was as big as a house. It grabbed at Lu Ming and emitted a terrifying aura. Lu Ming was shocked and quickly retreated. However, that hand claw actually expanded rapidly, becoming longer and bigger at an extremely fast speed. It grabbed toward Lu Ming at an alarming speed. Lu Ming was about to be grabbed. At this moment, Lu Ming controlled the prison-suppressing steel. The prison-suppressing steel shone and blasted at the claw. Chi. The claw was enveloped by the light of the prison-suppressing steel. It let out a sizzling sound and black smoke spread out. Roar! Another loud roar came from the building. The claw reached back. Lu Ming kept retreating. After retreating a distance, he let out a long breath. There were living creatures in the building. It looked like they were locked up. This shocked Lu Ming. This ancient city looked like it had been here for countless years. Why were there still living creatures? Could it be that the living creatures in the building were locked up by the original owner of this ancient city? However, to be able to survive for so long, it must be extremely powerful. Let's change directions. Lu Ming left the place and walked to the right for a while before continuing forward. In front of him, there were still many huge buildings. Lu Ming carefully passed through some buildings but did not find anything unusual. It seemed that not every building had living creatures. Even if there were, they might have died after so many years. Not many could survive. However, Lu Ming's good luck did not last for long. Roar! With a roar, a claw reached out from one of the buildings. This claw was bigger than the previous one. It was covered in black scales and its nails were very long, like the claws of a demon. Lu Ming blocked it with the prison-suppressing steel and retreated quickly. Fortunately, the prison-suppressing steel had a strong restraining effect on this kind of claw. The moment the claw came in contact with the light of the prison-suppressing steel, it quickly retreated into the building. Lu Ming retreated a distance and wandered around the area. It seemed that there were terrifying living creatures in the buildings in this area. He did not know which ones were and which were not. It was not safe to barge in like this even with the bloodline of the prison-suppressing steel. Lu Ming pondered. At this moment, a few figures were rushing in Lu Ming's direction at high speed. Just now, the light of the prison-suppressing steel's bloodline was discovered even from a distance. The Blue Demon King and the others were rushing towards Lu Ming. Among them, the Blue Demon King was the fastest. Although he was a peak true emperor and was forbidden to fly in this ancient city, his cultivation was still there. Even if he could not fly, his speed was still astonishing. Lu Ming was hesitating whether he should barge in. However, at this moment, he suddenly had an ominous feeling. He looked behind him and saw a figure dashing toward him at lightning speed. In an instant, it appeared not far away from Lu Ming. The Blue Demon King. Lu Ming's pupils shrank. Lu Ming, die. The Blue Demon King directly attacked Lu Ming. Block it! Lu Ming shouted. The armor rushed towards the Blue Demon King. Boom! The Blue Demon King was so strong that he directly sent the armor flying. Chapter 2062. Facing an expert like the Blue Demon King, rushing outside would only lead to death. Only by rushing inside would there be a chance of survival. Kill! The Blue Demon King shouted as he chased after Lu Ming. However, that armor once again entangled the Blue Demon King. The armor was covered in rust, but at this moment, it was emitting a dense blood-red light. Tentacles extended out and wrapped around the Blue Demon King. Boom! The Blue Demon King punched out. The terrifying fist energy sent the armor flying far away. However, the armor's material was indeed extraordinary. It was indestructible and wasn't destroyed by the Blue Demon King's attack. After the armor was sent flying, it once again flew towards the Blue Demon King. Seeing Lu Ming continuously rushing towards the depths of the ancient city, the Blue Demon King revealed an angry expression. At this moment, the other four also arrived. You guys go chase after Lu Ming. The Blue Demon King coldly said. The other four nodded and chased after him. The Blue Demon King coldly stared at the armor as a layer of black flames spread out from his body. This was a type of demonic fire. It was extremely terrifying and had an astonishing temperature. He pressed down with one hand and the demonic fire surged out and enveloped the armor. After all, the Blue Demon King was a peak true emperor expert. Although the armor's material was indestructible, it didn't contain a lot of energy. How could it be a match for the Blue Demon King? After being enveloped by the demonic fire, the armor emitted sizzling sounds. The scarlet blood was quickly refined by the demonic fire. Not long after, the armor fell to the ground with a clang, as if it had turned into a pile of scrap metal. Not only was the blood in the armor refined, everything else was also refined, including the trace of imprint. It disappeared without a trace and turned into a pile of scrap metal. Lu Ming, who was running, had a change in his expression. The white skeleton in his hands turned into ashes with a bang. Lu Ming knew that the armor would not be able to stop the Azure Demon King. He was a peak true emperor and was only one step away from becoming a great emperor. He was too powerful. Whoosh! Whoosh! Behind them, 4 figures quickly chased after Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. It was one of the 4 martial emperors. One of them was surrounded by a divine light, clearly a true emperor. This emperor was the fastest and chased after Lu Ming with lightning speed. Roar! At this moment, an explosive roar came from a huge building. A huge claw stretched out of the building and grabbed at Lu Ming. Let's fight! Lu Ming didn't stop. He continued to charge inside while controlling the prison-suppressing steel to float above his head. The prison-suppressing steel's bloodline shone brightly. The moment the giant claw got close to the prison-suppressing steel, it was as if it was burned by fire. It hurriedly withdrew. Lu Ming successfully dashed past this building and continued to go deeper. The true emperor caught up in just a few breaths. The true emperor naturally saw the claw earlier. He channeled his world force and was on full alert. Roar! Sure enough, the claw reached out once the true emperor got close. Its scales grew to the size of a house and aimed for the true emperor. What the hell is this? The true emperor roared and unleashed his world force. It turned into an axe and swung down. Boom! The battle axe chopped down on the huge palm, but the palm only trembled a little. It was completely fine. Only a shallow mark was left on the scales on the surface of the palm. On the other hand, the true emperor staggered back several steps. Roar! There seemed to be a terrifying fiend inside the building. It roared and reached for the true emperor with its claw. One could see that it was covered in black scales and bound by black chains. It made clanking noises as it reached for the true emperor. A world seemed to be floating in the true emperor's body. Several colors fused together to unleash a terrifying attack. This was the fusion of several types of laws, and its power was extremely terrifying. Compared to Lu Ming's initial integration of 2 types of laws, it was many times stronger. In the martial emperor realm, one could cultivate many kinds of laws. They could even merge them together, and their might would be extremely shocking. Boom! The true emperor's attack collided with the claw. Clank! The chains clashed. The claw was stopped, but the true emperor couldn't make it through. This living creature is locked inside and can't get out. I'll block it. You guys rush over and kill Lu Ming. The true emperor said and attacked again, successfully entangling the claw. The other 3 had a serious expression. They circled around and headed for Lu Ming. Lu Ming went deeper and deeper. He passed through more than 10 buildings but nothing happened. Boom! Boom! While Lu Ming was running, a loud explosion came from one of the buildings ahead. A gigantic hand reached for Lu Ming. Not only was this huge hand covered in scales, but there was also a terrifying cold current that swept toward Lu Ming. Even though he was far away, Lu Ming felt as though he was about to be frozen. Lu Ming gritted his teeth and continued to attack with the prison-suppressing monument. Fortunately, the prison-suppressing monument bloodline could still restrain the other party. That huge hand stretched back and Lu Ming dashed past it. Behind them, the black-robed middle-aged man and the other 2 had grave expressions. They weren't true emperors, so they didn't dare to charge forward. They circled around the building and chased after Lu Ming. Alas, they weren't so lucky. They didn't get far before a claw reached out from another building. Not good, retreat. One of them was shocked and retreated frantically. The expressions of the other 2 also changed abruptly, and they also retreated. But it was too late. The black-robed middle-aged man was the weakest. He was only a 2-star Void Emperor and was caught. Ah! He screamed miserably and tried to break free, but it was to no avail. The hand squeezed and the sound of bones cracking could be heard from the black-robed middle-aged man's body. He vomited blood and lost the strength to struggle. His eyes were filled with unwillingness and fear. He came in to kill Lu Ming for the reward. The reward could even help him survive the next calamity. But now, he was going to die here. After that large hand grabbed the black-robed middle-aged man, it stretched back. Then, within the building, there was a mournful scream, as well as the sound of crunching and chewing. The other two Void Emperors felt cold sweat all over. Even with their cultivation, they were sweating. Obviously, the black-robed middle-aged man was eaten by the creature in the building. The two of them didn't dare to move forward and stopped there. "Scram, you bunch of trash!" The Blue Demon King rushed over and punched the claw that was fighting with the true Emperor. A terrifying devilish flame burned and the claw was knocked away. Its scales scattered and fell to the ground. A peak true Emperor was much stronger than an ordinary true Emperor. Die! Chapter 2063. The Blue Demon King's strength was truly frightening. He was a peak true Emperor expert. Although the creature in the building was powerful, it had been suppressed for countless years and didn't have much battle strength left. Poof! The Blue Demon King's demonic saber slashed down and chopped off the giant arm. Roar! The creature in the building roared. The chains clanged and the building rumbled as if a giant beast wanted to rush out. But in the end, it didn't. The Blue Demon King rushed past and chased after Lu Ming. In front, Lu Ming's expression was solemn. The creatures in these buildings couldn't stop the Blue Demon King at all. He had to increase his speed. Lu Ming erupted with all his strength and rushed forward. Not long after, another creature roared from another building. This time, it was a large flame that spewed out from the building. Lu Ming used the prison-suppressing steel bloodline to block it and rushed past. Next, Lu Ming encountered several buildings with creatures. Lu Ming used the prison-suppressing steel to rush past them all. Behind him, the Blue Demon King chased after Lu Ming at an astonishing speed. If it weren't for the creatures obstructing the Blue Demon King along the way, he would have caught up to Lu Ming long ago. What should I do? Lu Ming quickly thought of a solution in his mind. Right now, he couldn't control the Heaven Emperor's body. With his own cultivation, facing the Blue Demon King was a dead end. However, other than the Heaven Emperor's body, he didn't have any treasures that could resist the Blue Demon King. After that, Lu Ming leaped a long distance. There were no more buildings in front of him, only some low rocks. Lu Ming didn't stop and could only continue forward. Now, he could only rely on his luck. He hoped that there was something that could stop the Blue Demon King. Whoosh! Lu Ming was like a flickering shadow, rushing forward at an astonishing speed. Behind them, the Blue Demon King continuously charged through the buildings and was about to reach the low rocky area. However, at this moment, Lu Ming, who was in front, suddenly stopped. Because there was no road ahead. There was a lake that blocked the way. This was a magma lake that covered an extremely wide area. It completely blocked the path ahead and emitted a terrifying temperature. This was definitely not ordinary magma, which made Lu Ming feel a sense of crisis. "Ha, kid, why aren't you running anymore?" The Blue Demon King caught up and stopped not too far away. He looked at Lu Ming with a hint of ridicule. "Old man, you're too narrow-minded. You've lost your face, but you're blaming it on me." As Lu Ming spoke, he tried to think of a countermeasure. Even in the face of despair, Lu Ming would not give up. It's not a good thing for young people to be in the limelight. The Blue Demon King said coldly and walked towards Lu Ming step by step. In his opinion, Lu Ming should not have made a move back then. He should have just sat there quietly. How could he lose face in front of everyone? "Kid, you must have had a lot of fortuitous encounters to be able to reach this step. Give me your things, or any ancient scriptures, and I might let you live." The Blue Demon King sneered. Lu Ming curled his lips. It would be strange if this old man would let him go. Even if he gave him everything, the other party would still kill him and not let him live. "How can I believe you?" Lu Ming said. "In the current situation, you have to believe me even if you don't want to." The Blue Demon King said coldly. Go and kill those 3 guys, and I'll give it to you. I'll give you all the fortuitous encounters I've obtained. Lu Ming looked behind the Blue Demon King. Behind him, the other 3 experts had followed the Blue Demon King's path and arrived here. Hearing this, the 3 of them could not help but stop, their faces turning pale. The Blue Demon King was vicious and merciless. Perhaps he would really do that. Kid, you don't have the qualifications to bargain with me now. If you don't hand it over, I'll cripple you right now and slowly interrogate you. Let's see if you'll hand it over or not. The Blue Demon King's body emitted a cold killing intent, and terrifying demonic flames spread out. Whoosh! At this moment, Lu Ming's figure moved. With a step, his body leaped towards the lava lake. Now, he could only rely on the lava lake to take a gamble. Trying to escape? Die! The Blue Demon King shouted and blasted out a palm. Demonic flames filled the sky and enveloped Lu Ming. The demonic flames were like a bolt of lightning. Its speed was astonishing. In an instant, it caught up to Lu Ming and enveloped Lu Ming. Roar! Lu Ming let out a beast-like roar. Too painful. Being enveloped by the demonic flames was too painful. Lu Ming felt as if his body was about to be burnt to a crisp. Lu Ming frantically circulated his Saint power to cover his body. At the same time, he controlled the primal chaos law to cover his body with primal chaos light to resist the attack of the demonic flames. However, the demonic flames were released by the Blue Demon King. A peak true emperor was too terrifying. All of Lu Ming's defenses were burned through in an instant. Plop! At this time, Lu Ming fell into the lava lake and disappeared. After entering the lava lake, Lu Ming gathered his remaining strength and frantically rushed towards the bottom of the lake. You want to leave? Impossible. The Blue Demon King's expression was very cold. He also rushed into the lava lake and chased after Lu Ming. Boom! Boom! The Blue Demon King waved his palms, stirring up the surrounding lava. Several terrifying demonic flames broke through the lava and blasted towards Lu Ming. Lu Ming simply couldn't dodge and was hit by several demonic flames. The terrifying temperature of the demonic flames burned through Lu Ming's defenses. A heart-wrenching pain spread throughout Lu Ming's body. Even with Lu Ming's current spiritual body, he couldn't resist at all. He felt as if his body was turning into ashes bit by bit. However, Lu Ming still didn't give up. He crazily rushed down. The temperature at the bottom of the lava lake was shockingly high. The lower he went, the higher the temperature. Moreover, there was a terrifying pressure pressing down on Lu Ming from all directions. Being burned by the Blue Demon King's demonic flames and the lava's flames, Lu Ming couldn't resist at all. His body was slowly burning into ashes. Lu Ming could feel that the flesh on his body was disappearing, and even his bones were exposed. However, Lu Ming continued to dive at an astonishing speed because the Blue Demon King was still chasing after him. Boom! The Azure Demon struck out with his palm again. However, the pressure of the lava here was already astonishing. Although the Blue Demon King's palm force broke through the lava, a portion of it had already been offset. Only a portion of it landed on Lu Ming's body. At this moment, Lu Ming's hands and feet turned into ashes in the demonic flames. Only his body was still bitterly holding on as he continued to descend. However, the Blue Demon King still didn't give up the chase. The two of them continued to descend. Along the way, the Blue Demon King struck out a few more times. However, due to the obstruction of the lava, most of the power was blocked. At this moment, they had already dived for thousands of meters. At this point, the temperature was extremely terrifying. Even the Blue Demon King felt a sense of danger. It was as if there was something below that could threaten his safety. Humph, this kid is dead for sure. Chapter 2064. The Blue Demon King was certain that Lu Ming was dead for sure. His demonic fire alone wasn't something that Lu Ming could resist. Under his demonic fire, Lu Ming would be reduced to ashes. Moreover, this place was under the magma lake. Even he was wary of the magma here. Not only was the temperature astonishingly high, but the pressure was also frightening. Lu Ming was dead for sure under any one of the two conditions, not to mention the combination of the two conditions. Lu Ming had no chance at all. At this moment, not only were Lu Ming's limbs burned to ashes, but his body was also on the verge of being reduced to ashes. The Blue Demon King sneered and rushed to the surface of the magma lake. Although he didn't obtain Lu Ming's fortune, being able to kill Lu Ming wasn't bad either. In the blink of an eye, the Blue Demon King rushed to the surface of the magma lake and flew to the surface. What happened to that brat? Someone asked. He's dead for sure. Let's go. We'll explore this ancient city and then leave. The Blue Demon King said. Then, his figure flashed and left this place. The other three followed the Blue Demon King. At this moment, Lu Ming was indeed facing the greatest crisis of his life. At this moment, his body was about to be reduced to ashes. Most importantly, he couldn't muster any strength to rush up. His body was completely enveloped by the demonic fire. This was the demonic fire of a peak true emperor. It wouldn't extinguish until its target was reduced to ashes. Asterisk chi chi chi. Asterisk Lu Ming could clearly feel that his body was collapsing, disintegrating, and being burned to ashes. There were 3 strands of primal chaos energy in his body. At this moment, the 3 strands of primal chaos energy were like 3 small snakes swimming around before rushing into one of the Saint Hearts. Enter the Saint Heart. Lu Ming used his soul power to move the Great Pill Development Cauldron and the Mountain River diagram in his Sea of Consciousness into another Saint Heart. Next, Lu Ming's soul also rushed into another Saint Heart. As long as his soul was not destroyed, there was always hope for him to be resurrected. In just a few breaths, Lu Ming's physical body was burned to ashes by the demonic fire and disappeared without a trace. Only the 2 Saint Hearts were left floating there. After the demonic fire burned Lu Ming's body to ashes, it seemed to have lost its target and finally disappeared. Not good. Inside the Sacred Heart, Lu Ming's spirit could still sense everything that was happening outside. At this moment, he discovered that the lava outside was frantically squeezing towards the 2 Sacred Hearts. Let the 2 Sacred Hearts collide with each other. The magma outside wrapped around the 2 Saint Hearts and pressed against them, as if it was going to crush them. Moreover, the terrifying temperature of the magma was also burning the Saint Hearts, as if it was going to melt them. Lu Ming was worried. If the 2 Sacred Hearts were to melt, then he would really have no chance at all. Autumn Moon. Lu Ming muttered as he glanced at the Great Pill Development Furnace that was floating in the Sacred Heart. If the Sacred Heart was shattered, leaving the Great Pill Development Furnace here, it would not be able to withstand the terrifying temperature outside. Although the Great Pill Development Furnace was miraculous, it would be dangerous in such an environment for a long time. This trip was originally to save Autumn Moon. However, before he could save Autumn Moon, he was already in danger. Clang! At this moment, the 2 Sacred Hearts shook violently and a corner of the outer layer crumbled. Boom! When the corner of the Sacred Heart crumbled, Lu Ming's spirit shook violently as if there was a terrifying flame enveloping his spirit. Am I really going to die here today? This thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind. At this moment, he felt the aura of death. His spirit shook and his consciousness blurred. In the end, his vision turned black and he did not know anything. Only the 2 Sacred Hearts were being squeezed by the terrifying magma. However, a strange scene happened. The shattered parts of the 2 Sacred Hearts did not dissipate into nothingness. Instead, they stuck together and flew back into the Sacred Hearts. Clang! Clang! As the magma squeezed and burned, more and more of the 2 Sacred Hearts crumbled. However, the fragments and powder of the Sacred Hearts fused together and flew back into the 2 Sacred Hearts. It was as if the 2 Sacred Hearts were fusing together. Of course, Lu Ming did not know any of this. Next, the Sacred Hearts continued to crumble and then fuse together. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed. During these 3 days, there were originally two sacred hearts. However, this time, there was only one. It turned into a bigger sacred heart. Buzz! When the two saint hearts merged into one, a mysterious fluctuation was emitted. Then, the larger saint heart started to spin at an extremely fast speed. At this moment, the sacred heart produced a strange power. The energy in the magma around him gathered toward Lu Ming. Just like that, a few days passed. A strange scene occurred. With the sacred heart as the center, the outline of a body appeared. It was just an outline and not a real body. It was made up of energy. When the outline of the body appeared, the three streams of chaotic chi from the sacred heart flew out and wandered around the outline of the body. At the same time, the energy in the magma continued to gather and pour into the sacred heart. Then, it diffused out from the sacred heart and poured into the outline of the body. The silhouette of this body was slowly solidifying. Reforging the body. This was a reforging of the body. When the two sacred hearts fused into one, they were reforging the body on their own. Moreover, they were using the energy in the magma to reforge the body. The process of reforging the body was very slow. Just like that, a total of 3 months passed. In the magma, a perfect body appeared. This body was Lu Ming's body. However, this body was a little different from the previous one. There was a fiery red color on the skin, as if flames were burning. The curves of the body were perfect, but they seemed to be filled with explosive power. The three streams of chaotic chi were also perfectly fused into the body. At this moment, the fingers of the body moved. Slowly, it opened its eyes. Lu Ming looked around in surprise. Finally, he looked at his body and was very shocked. He remembered very clearly that when he was attacked by the Blue Demon King, his body turned into ashes in the demonic fire. Even the sacred heart was squeezed by the magma, his soul was shaken, and his consciousness fell into darkness. He did not expect to find his body still there when he woke up. No, this body is a little different from before. Lu Ming felt something strange the next moment. He found that although this body was still made of flesh and blood, it was stronger than before. The three streams of chaotic chi were perfectly fused and full of explosive power. At the same time, this body seemed to be unafraid of the magma around it. It was as if it was one with the magma around it. The magma around it was ineffective against it. This was not because Lu Ming's body was so strong that it was unafraid of the temperature of the magma. It was because his body was reforged with the energy here. Their energy was the same, so it was unafraid. Chapter 2065. My body has been reforged. Lu Ming thought for a while and realized the problem. He was overjoyed. Although he did not understand how his body had been reforged, it was a good thing no matter what. No, my sacred heart. At this moment, Lu Ming finally realized that something was wrong with his sacred heart. Previously, there were two sacred hearts. How did it become one now? It was just that this sacred heart was bigger. Could it be that the two sacred hearts have merged together? Lu Ming guessed and was shocked. He had never thought that the two sacred hearts that had been cultivated with the twin life forbidden skill could merge together. Moreover, Lu Ming realized that not only had his body been reforged, but his cultivation had also increased. He had reached the great circle of the absolute saint realm. Not only that, Lu Ming also realized that after the two sacred hearts had merged, his two laws had also completely merged. Previously, the array law and the chaotic law had only been in the initial stages of merging. Now, they had completely merged. The two laws have completely merged. Their power will definitely increase greatly. Lu Ming was pleasantly surprised. This time, it was a blessing in disguise. Not only did he not die, but his cultivation had also broken through. Moreover, the strength of his body had increased greatly. The two laws had also merged. He had heard that martial emperors had to take this step. Martial emperors needed to comprehend different laws. Then, they needed to fuse the different laws together. He was now doing what martial emperors should do. If the Blue Demon King knew about this, he would probably be furious. Lu Ming's lips curled into a faint smile. Then, with a thought, the mountain river diagram and the Great Pill development furnace returned to his mind. The suppressing prison steel bloodline and the third bloodline are still there. Lu Ming sensed the suppressing prison steel bloodline and the third bloodline and found that they were still there. This made him secretly amazed. He had never been able to understand these two bloodlines and felt that it was very strange. This time, even his body had been destroyed. After the reforging, the two bloodlines were still there. This was really difficult to explain. It was extremely mysterious. However, this was a good thing for Lu Ming. I don't know how much time has passed, but the energy here is very abundant. I can let the Celestial Emperor's body absorb energy here. Thinking of this, Lu Ming's mind stirred, and the Heavenly Emperor's physical body appeared from the mountain and river diagram. Following that, Lu Ming activated his cultivation technique and began to control the Celestial Thearcha's body to absorb the surrounding energy. The Celestial Thearcha's body was like a black hole, absorbing the energy from the outside like crazy. In the magma, a large amount of fire energy was absorbed by the Sky Emperor's body. Not long after, with the Celestial Thearcha's body as the center, all the energy in the magma was sucked dry and turned into rock. Lu Ming could only move to another location and continue absorbing. The energy required for a Heavenly Emperor's physical body was too much, incomparably astonishing. Back then, Lu Ming had spent more than half a year. In that more than half a year, he had been fighting with the evil god tribe. Every time he killed an evil god tribe member, he would let the Celestial Emperor's body absorb the crystals that they carried. In that more than half a year, Lu Ming had killed countless evil god tribe members and let the Celestial Emperor's body absorb countless crystals and energy. In the end, the Celestial Emperor's body's energy had only accumulated to 12%. Moreover, the more the Celestial Emperor's body's energy accumulated, the harder it was to increase it. The energy required was even more shocking. Just like that, Lu Ming continued to absorb energy under the magma. Large amounts of magma turned into rock. 2 days later, the Celestial Emperor's body's energy had increased to 8%. This was because the Celestial Emperor's body had already stored a portion of energy before. 8% is not enough. I need at least 10%. The temperature below the magma is higher, so I'll go down and absorb. A thought flashed through Lu Ming's mind and he headed down. As long as the Celestial Emperor's body's energy had accumulated to more than 10%, Lu Ming would be able to control it. At that time, he would be able to fight against a great emperor. This time, his chances of obtaining the immemorial demon coffin would be greatly increased. Also, there was the Blue Demon King. A cold killing intent flashed in Lu Ming's eyes. He had to kill the Blue Demon King. Lu Ming rushed down into the magma lake. The temperature below the magma lake was shockingly high. Even the Blue Demon King had retreated. It could be seen how shocking it was. Even though Lu Ming's current body was reforged with the energy of the magma lake, he didn't dare to go too deep. Otherwise, he would be turned into ashes. Lu Ming didn't want to experience the feeling of being turned into ashes again. This time, he was lucky to have reforged his body. Next time, he might not be so lucky. This is it. After diving for a while, Lu Ming felt a terrifying pressure and stopped. He controlled the Celestial Emperor's body and began to absorb energy. The energy here was indeed much stronger. When he finished absorbing the nearby energy, Lu Ming moved to another place and continued to absorb. Of course, it was just a horizontal shift. Lu Ming didn't dare to continue diving. After a few more days, the energy in the Celestial Emperor's body increased explosively. It reached a shocking 16%. It was 4% more than the previous time. Enough! Lu Ming was overjoyed. 16% energy was absolutely shocking. If he fought the great emperor of the He clan again with this amount of energy, he would definitely beat him into a pulp. Lu Ming decided to leave this place. The key was that the energy above the magma lake had almost been completely absorbed by Lu Ming. If he went down, the temperature would be too high. Lu Ming didn't dare to go down. Moreover, he didn't know how long he had been here. He wondered how the ancient great emperor and the others were doing. Did they find the ancient demon coffin? Lu Ming put the celestial emperor's body into the mountain river diagram. Then, he broke through the rocks and rushed up. After a while, Lu Ming left the magma lake and landed on the shore. He looked around and didn't see anyone. It seems like the Blue Demon King and the others have all left. I don't know how long it's been. Let's look at the map first. Lu Ming thought. He took out the black jade talisman and injected his saint power into it. Suddenly, a black diagram floated in the air. Something's happening. Lu Ming's heart jumped. The other parts of the black diagram were pitch black. However, there were some dots of light shining in the darkness. This meant that someone had also activated the jade talisman to see it. In one place, there was a group of dots of light. There were at least 100 of them, shining brightly. And in other places, there were dots of light moving towards that group of dots of light. There are so many people gathered together. Could it be that the ancient great emperor had already gathered everyone? Lu Ming thought. This meant that the ancient great emperor hadn't taken back the ancient demon coffin. Let's go. Lu Ming put away the jade talisman and rushed out of the city. When he passed by the buildings, there were still beast roars and claws attacking him. However, Lu Ming took out the prison-suppressing steel bloodline and passed through the buildings safely. Not long after, Lu Ming passed through the entire ancient city and exited the city gate. Kill. Chapter 2066. The black mass of demonic spirits charged at Lu Ming. Among them, there were two one-star illusionary emperor demonic spirits. Their attacks were terrifying. Scram! Lu Ming activated the suppressing hell skill and threw out two punches. Dong! Dong! Lu Ming's attack collided with the two demonic spirit martial emperors, creating two loud explosions. The two demonic spirit martial emperors' bodies shook violently. They could not block Lu Ming's terrifying power and were forced to retreat. I'll use you guys to test my battle strength. Kill! Lu Ming's arms shook. He felt that his body was filled with boundless power. Chaotic Calamity Finger. Lu Ming pointed out two fingers. Sacred power burst out. At the same time, the law of array and the law of primal chaos merged and strengthened the chaotic calamity finger. The two terrifying finger forces blasted toward the two demonic spirit martial emperors. Wherever he passed, energy surged, and all the demonic spirits in front of him all collapsed and exploded. The two demonic spirit martial emperors seemed to feel threatened. They unleashed their full strength and attacked Lu Ming. Boom! Boom! Two earth-shattering explosions rang out. This time, the two demonic spirit martial emperors' bodies shook violently. They were forced to retreat and their bodies almost exploded. Lu Ming's eyes lit up with joy. His battle prowess had indeed skyrocketed by a large margin. The two one-star martial emperors were completely suppressed by him. Previously, when Lu Ming's cultivation was at the peak of the absolute saint realm, he was no match for the one-star martial emperors. He was at a disadvantage and was suppressed by the other party. At that time, Lu Ming's battle strength was enough to contend with an ordinary one-star martial emperor if he had broken through to the peak of the absolute saint realm. However, this time, Lu Ming's cultivation had not only broken through. The strength of his physical body and the fusion of the two laws had increased his battle strength again. He could already suppress one-star martial emperors. Even the two one-star martial emperors were suppressed by him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Lu Ming continued to point out the chaotic calamity finger. The two demonic spirit martial emperors were forced back by Lu Ming. They could only barely resist. As for the demonic spirits below the martial emperor level, they exploded when they were swept by Lu Ming's finger forces. Bang! Bang! The weapons of the two demonic spirit martial emperors were sent flying by Lu Ming. Cracks appeared on their bodies. If it wasn't for the fact that their armors were extremely tough, they would have been shattered by Lu Ming. Kill! Not far away, shouts of killing could be heard as a few more demonic spirits rushed over. They were all martial emperors. I'm not going to play with you anymore. Let's go. Lu Ming's figure turned around and rushed outside. Everywhere he passed, large swathes of devil spirits were scattered. Ordinary devil spirits couldn't stop him at all. Lu Ming rampaged, breaking through the attack of the devil spirit army in a short while, and disappeared here. After leaving this area, Lu Ming took out the jade card again and activated the pattern on it. He could clearly see that Lu Ming's side also had a dot of light shining. Lu Ming found a direction and rushed towards that pile of dots of light. Along the way, they didn't encounter anything strange. It was very peaceful. Lu Ming got closer and closer to that group of dots of light. However, it still took 3 days for Lu Ming to get close to those dots of light. When Xiao Chen looked into the distance, he saw a group of people standing high in the sky. With one glance, Lu Ming saw the ancient Great Emperor. There was also the Blue Demon King. Furthermore, the few martial emperors who chased after him back then were also there. Lu Ming's eyes emitted a cold killing intent. In the next moment, he concealed it very well. Lu Ming put away the jade card and flew towards the ancient Great Emperor's group. With the ancient Great Emperor around, Xiao Chen believed that the Blue Demon King would not dare to make a move against him. Furthermore, Lu Ming did not fear the Blue Demon King now. If the other party made a move, Lu Ming could use this opportunity to eliminate the other party. Lu Ming flew over, attracting everyone's attention. Lu Ming, you! When the Blue Demon King saw Lu Ming, his mouth opened so wide that it could fit a duck egg. His eyeballs were about to fall out. It was simply unbelievable. Wasn't Lu Ming's body burned by his demonic fire and he was blasted into the magma? How was he still alive? Furthermore, Lu Ming's body looked undamaged. Even his aura seemed much stronger. You, who are you? The Blue Demon King stammered. He even suspected that the Lu Ming before him was someone else in disguise. Blue Demon King, it looks like you're really old. You don't even recognize me? Lu Ming sneered. You, how could this be? The Blue Demon King was still flabbergasted. The few martial emperors who chased after Lu Ming were also flabbergasted, their faces filled with disbelief. Thanks to the Blue Demon King, I'm fine. I just accidentally broke through my cultivation. Lu Ming smiled faintly. The Blue Demon King almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. His cultivation had broken through. Lu Ming wanted to tell him that not only was he fine, but his cultivation had also broken through. This is all thanks to the Blue Demon King. If it wasn't for the Blue Demon King, my cultivation would probably still need some time to break through. Lu Ming said again. The Blue Demon King only felt pain in his liver, lungs, and entire body. His breath was stuck in his chest, and he really almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. What's going on? The ancient Great Emperor looked over. Great Emperor, I'm fine. The Blue Demon King hurriedly said. It's good that you're fine. Our goal is to take back the ancient demonic coffin. None of you should act recklessly. The ancient Great Emperor warned. With his experience, how could he not see that something must have happened between Lu Ming and the Blue Demon King? However, since Lu Ming was fine, he would not care. Lu Ming also smiled faintly and did not say anything. The Blue Demon King secretly glanced at Lu Ming, a cold killing intent flashing in his eyes. Under such circumstances, Lu Ming did not die, which shocked him. Moreover, he had broken through. There had always been a saying in the cultivation world. Some peerless geniuses were born with great luck. Such people were usually very difficult to kill. Often, when faced with danger, they could turn it into safety and even use it to break through. In the Blue Demon King's opinion, Lu Ming was such a person. Such a person should be eliminated. He and Lu Ming were already mortal enemies. When Lu Ming grew stronger in the future, he would definitely seek revenge on him. Therefore, he had to eliminate Lu Ming before Lu Ming grew stronger. All of them had different thoughts in their minds. In the end, Lu Ming looked for others to inquire about the news. After asking, Lu Ming found out that he had been in the magma for a few months. This time, the ancient great emperor found traces of the ancient demonic coffin. Therefore, he used the map to gather everyone here. When the time came, they would snatch the ancient demonic coffin back. Time passed day by day. More and more people came here. After a few more days, there were already more than 200 people here. At this time, the ancient great emperor introduced the situation to everyone. The ancient great emperor waved his hand and a picture appeared in the air. In the picture, there was a large mountain. On the mountain, there was a group of figures. That is, everyone's eyes narrowed because the figures on the mountain were all wearing black robes. Their faces could not be seen clearly, but they looked very similar to the person who had fought with the ancient great emperor. Chapter 2067. Of course, with so many black-robed men, it was impossible for all of them to be great emperors. They were probably from the same race. The group of black-robed men looked skinny and not very burly. At this moment, they were circling a huge black coffin, shouting different things as if they were performing some kind of ritual. Is that the ancient demonic coffin? Lu Ming stared at the huge black coffin in the image. His eyes flashed with a blazing light. Boom! Suddenly, one of the black-robed men looked at the void as if he was looking at them. With a wave of his hand, the void trembled and the image formed by the ancient great emperor collapsed. Obviously, the other party's great emperor had discovered that the ancient great emperor was spying on them. The other party has an immortal emperor, the same one who fought against me before. There are also some other experts. Later on, I will act to tie down their immortal emperor while you guys act to seize the Ionic Devil coffin. After that, don't stay here any longer and immediately leave the Devil's Sea. Do you understand? The ancient great emperor instructed. Yes, great emperor. Everyone obeyed. Following which, the ancient great emperor took the lead and everyone flew forward. Not long after, a huge mountain appeared in front of them. Everyone's eyesight was very shocking. They could see it even from afar. That mountain was the image that the ancient great emperor had shown just now. At the peak of the mountain, there was a group of black-robed men circling a huge demonic coffin. The ancient great emperor moved and rushed towards the mountain. His speed was so fast that it was faster than everyone could react. When the ancient great emperor got close to the mountain, a black light rushed out from the mountain. It was like a black waterfall that cut through the void. It was also like a demonic blade that slashed towards the ancient great emperor. Boom! The ancient great emperor also made his move. When the two of them collided, a shocking explosion rang out. Dong! Dong! The two of them continued to exchange blows, causing the sky to rumble. The two of them fought high up in the sky and tore the space apart. It's our turn to attack. Kill! Azure Demon shouted coldly and rushed towards the mountain. Before he left, he coldly glanced at Lu Ming. The strongest true emperors and void emperors rushed forward because they were much faster than quasi-emperors. Then, the most numerous quasi-emperors also charged forward. Lu Ming was among the many quasi-emperors. In a few breaths, those martial emperors were about to reach the mountain in front. However, at this moment, two figures suddenly stopped in front of Lu Ming. They were two old men with extremely powerful auras. They were both Void Emperor realm experts. The two of them revealed a faint killing intent as they blocked Lu Ming's path. Some quasi-emperors looked at Lu Ming with pitiful expressions. However, no one stayed behind, all of them flying forward. All of a sudden, only Lu Ming and the two old men were left. What is the meaning of this? Lu Ming said calmly. It's simple. I'll take your life. The old man on the right revealed a cold smile. The Blue Demon King asked you to kill me again. Lu Ming sneered. So what if you know? You're still going to die. The old man on the right said. Let's end this quickly. It's not good to be discovered by the great emperor. The old man on the left said. In the next moment, the two old men's auras skyrocketed. They were about to kill Lu Ming. Then die. At this moment, a stone sword appeared in Lu Ming's hand. Whoosh! Lu Ming held the stone sword and slashed out. A crescent-shaped sword light slashed out. Puff! Puff! The two Void Emperor Realm old men's attacks and defenses were useless. They were cut in half by Lu Ming's sword. The terrifying sword chi went through their bodies and instantly destroyed their souls. In the face of the Heavenly Emperor's sword, the two Void Emperors were killed instantly without any resistance. Lu Ming put away their storage rings and dashed toward the mountain in front of him. At this moment, a great battle had broken out on the mountain. The experts of the ancient demon nation and the black-robed men were fighting fiercely. Lu Ming restrained his aura. Like a ghost, he approached the mountain at high speed. He did not attack. He wanted to use the divine breath technique to climb the mountain silently and take the ancient demon coffin. Lu Ming followed the mountain and avoided the others by using the boulders. Soon, he was halfway up the mountain and would reach the peak soon. Boom! Boom! Around the mountain, there was a great battle between martial emperors. Gravel flew everywhere. All kinds of boulders were thrown at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body flashed and dodged them skillfully. Lu Ming was quickly approaching the peak. Suddenly, a blazing aura blasted toward Lu Ming at an alarming speed. Lu Ming's hair stood on end. His body that was moving forward suddenly stopped and then retreated rapidly. Boom! A beam of scorching black light blasted the spot where Lu Ming was standing just now. A pitch-black hole immediately appeared on the mountain. Lu Ming, you are really lucky. An old man appeared in front of Lu Ming. His eyes were cold. Who else could it be other than the Blue Demon King? Just now, the Blue Demon King had defeated an opponent and wanted to rush to the peak. Unexpectedly, he found Lu Ming and attacked Lu Ming. However, Lu Ming's spiritual senses were sharp and he managed to dodge the attack. The Blue Demon King's eyes were filled with killing intent and shock. He had sent two Void Emperors to kill Lu Ming. They were not ordinary Void Emperors. One was a 3-star Void Emperor and the other was a 4-star Void Emperor. However, Lu Ming was safe and sound. This shocked him. He was determined to kill Lu Ming. Since I didn't kill you last time, I'll kill you again. This time, I'll turn you into ashes and scatter your soul. Let's see if you can still survive. The Blue Demon King's eyes were gloomy as his body emitted devilish flames. A peak true emperor was too frightening. If he used his full strength, he could turn Lu Ming into ashes in one move. Back in the ancient city, the Blue Demon King did not use his full strength. Later, Lu Ming jumped into the magma and the magma greatly hindered the Blue Demon King's attack. Otherwise, Lu Ming would not have had the chance to merge two Saint Hearts. Bang! The Blue Demon King moved. He took a step forward and his devilish flames turned into a devilish flame saber that slashed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming was not afraid. He held the stone sword and slashed out. Boom! The stone sword and the devilish flame saber clashed, creating a terrifying explosion. Lu Ming felt a powerful force surging towards him and couldn't help but retreat. However, the devilish flame saber was blocked by him. Your sword! The Blue Demon King was shocked. Lu Ming could actually block his attack. His gaze fell on the stone sword in Lu Ming's hand, which was emitting blazing flames. Lu Ming was only a paragon saint, but he could unleash such terrifying power with the stone sword. If he had it, wouldn't he be able to fight against a great emperor? The Blue Demon King's heart was burning. He understood that the two Void Emperors from before were killed by this sword. Hand over the sword and I'll leave your corpse intact.